Hello, lovely, and welcome to another episode of Loving Life with Court. Today, we are talking about a life that is loved chooses growth, not guilt. Today's episode is for anyone that just is ready for change. Maybe you've been working on changing something for a long time. It could be months, it could be years, and you are at the point where hopelessness has just set in. You don't know how to make lasting changes in your life, and you just don't know where to turn to next. So if this at all resonates with you, stick with me, because it wasn't too long ago that I was in the very same situation, and I'm looking forward to sharing some insight on that with you. But before I do that, I do want to announce that I have made a Facebook group, and I'm really excited about it, that is exclusive for Loving Life with Court listeners only. And it will all be based on just building community with one another. It's a private group. We can connect, we can do check-ins, we can talk about episodes and just love life together. So the Facebook group is called Loving Life Together. You can find the link in the show notes below. And I just cannot wait to connect with you. There are so many listeners that I just haven't had the chance to get to know. And it would be the most amazing thing if you join and we can connect with one another. So do me a favor and go and connect with me on the Facebook group. But let's get into today's episode. So as I said, we're going to be looking at the reasons why it's just not working and how to solve it. And what I want to share with you first before we dive into that is where I started. To give you a little bit of background, if you're a new listener, if you haven't listened to some of my first episodes I put out, it wasn't long ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, that I was heavily overweight. I was 250 pounds. I was at the lowest point of my entire life, I would say. I had no self-worth, no self-love. I felt hopeless every day. I had accepted my state of being. Honestly, the words that I would say to myself is that I'll always be overweight. I'll always be unlovable. I'll always have difficulties building relationships with my family. I'll always be unworthy. It was just this cycle of negativity and putting myself down in hopelessness that I was stuck in. I was heavily addicted to food. I was very much abusing alcohol and substances, and I was just hopeless. I was at a very bad place of my life, and I didn't see the light. And although possibly there was a little sprinkle of optimism somewhere deep down in me that got me out of that, there were many times that it didn't feel like that. So if you are in a similar situation, you're trying to change parts of your life and it's just not working out. For me at the time, it was figuring my life out. I felt like I had no direction. I wasn't connected with myself. And I just felt, again, I felt very hopeless. I spent a lot of my days wanting to change only because I was ashamed. I was ashamed of my body. I was ashamed of my weight. I was ashamed that I didn't want to, I didn't want to do what I was doing with every aspect of my life. I was putting myself down. I was going to school just because I felt like it was the right thing to do. I just lost connection with everything. All of my progress, my goals, my fears, my commitments, they were all rooted by shame. Everything that I wanted to change of myself was because I hated every part of myself. And an example of that was like, I worked out because I was just utterly disgusted by myself. I would make myself go to the gym, and as I was running on the treadmill or doing weights, whatever it was, all of the words I had internalized were like, you have to lose the weight, you have to do this, you have to get skinny so that people like you and stop looking at you as a fat person. And it was just the spiral of that was just one example of one part of my life, but I felt like that in every other way. I went to university because growing up, I always felt like I wasn't smart. So I wanted to prove to everybody that I was smart. And it just all rooted from my insecurities and my shame, as opposed to doing things because I felt as though I deserved it. So in short, whether I achieved the things I wanted to or not, I was always working through a lens of shame. Now, if this is something that just really resonates with you, what I want to explore today is how can you recognize the source of your shame and break free from its grip? Because that's where I was able to really become the person I wanted to be and create long-lasting changes that were not rooted from shame, but from love. And what I had to do first was dig into where these shameful feelings were coming from, recognizing the source of shame, and being able to break free from its grip. And where mine was most rooted from was unworthiness and the need for validation and the need for acceptance. And I felt as though if the people around me didn't give me validation and acceptance, it was because I was shameful to them. But along that journey, I realized that it wasn't external validation or acceptance that I was seeking, but it was the internal. It was my own acceptance and validation that I needed to be able to actually make long-lasting changes in my life. It's all about shifting your perspective and understanding that shame is not a reflection of who you are, but of the limiting beliefs you've absorbed. We don't feel shameful until someone makes us feel shameful of things. And then we begin to internalize it, and this is what drives us to want to change. When we were in elementary school, if you've ever been bullied for anything, it's not until you're bullied or someone puts you down that you feel the need to change something. You feel that shame. And if this is continuously instilled to us as we grow up and it transfers into our adulthood, we take this shameful experience and internalize it, and going again to where we absorb these limiting beliefs of who we are and what we are worth. So how can we shift from change driven by shame to change motivated by self-love? Because this is where it all roots from, is I was not able to change until I completely and utterly understood that I deserved the change, nobody else. It wasn't because I had to be shameful of these things, but it was because I deserved being the best version of myself. And that's where self-love stems from. So how can we do that? First thing is giving yourself permission to change your mindset. Because if you just have a baseline understanding of what I'm talking about, but you're not ready to embody it, it's still going to be very difficult. You may go again into that lens of shame of you're not able to love yourself, so you have to force yourself to love yourself to be able to do this. But that's not where you have to start. And I'll explain. So number one, in giving yourself permission to change your mindset, is recognize the root of your shame. And we touched on this already, but really dive into what are you punishing yourself for? And just taking a moment to sit with that question. When you feel shameful, when we've absorbed these limiting beliefs, all it is a way for us to internalize some form of punishment. So what is it that you are punishing yourself for? If you have difficulties with your weight, where's that stemming from, and why do you feel the need to punish yourself for it? And acknowledge that change stemming from shame often feels like a punishment, in the sense that you say to yourself, I'm not good enough, so I have to change. And eventually you can change that to, I deserve this, and that's why I'm going to change. But it all starts with recognizing the root of shame. If we want to be able to make change on a gross level, we have to be able to go into the subtle layers of the self, because this is where the change lies. What is underneath all of these layers, and why is it there? So what is the root of your shame? What is the root of why you feel the need to punish yourself? And when you can start to recognize that, that's where we can remove those layers and make change on a gross level. And the second part of changing your mindset and reprogramming your mindset is reframing the narrative. So shifting the narrative by asking, what if I chose to change because I deserve better, not because I am lacking? And how this shift happened for me is I started asking myself, what if I chose to change because I deserve to lose the weight and not because I need to, not because I look bad, not because other people will think I look prettier, but because my body deserves the best version of myself. My mind deserves the best version of my body. Okay, so first thing, recognizing the root of the shame. Second is reframing the narrative. And when you can begin to do this, this is where we are reprogramming our mind to shift from a lens of shame to a lens of self-love. To go one step further into this, a lot of reflection that we're doing in this moment, I want to ask you a question. And that is, if changing was a gift, so something that you could receive, and you were the gifter, what would you ask yourself for? Think about it. If changing was a gift and you were the gifter, what would you ask yourself for? And I'll tell you why this question resonated with me so much along my journey is when someone asks me for something, I do it for them out of love, not as a punishment to myself. You know, if my husband asks me for a glass of water, I don't feel like he's punishing me, asking me for that. I feel like he's just asking for it because he knows I love him and I'll do it. Now, how can you adopt this perspective for yourself? Because if you yourself also are able to gift others what they need and give to others, why can't you do it for yourself? If changing was a gift, which it is, and you were the gifter, what would you ask yourself for? Now respond as though you were gifting yourself that change. And what does gifting come from? It comes from love. Now, before I hop off, I want to offer you something as well that can really help you dive deeper into what I've talked about today. If you want to recognize the source of your shame, I invite you to book a complimentary breathwork session with me that will be focused on understanding and releasing the limiting beliefs that you've absorbed and break free from the grip of shame. So a lot of this is going to have to do with removing the blocks in your body that is preventing you from being able to embrace the best, most lovable version of yourself. All you have to do, it's completely free. All you have to do is click the link below in the show notes. It says complimentary session, and we can get this show on the road. And by doing that, that may be your first step into gifting you the change that you so much desire and that you deserve. That's today's episode. I love you so very much, and a friendly reminder to not only be kind to others, but also to your beautiful, amazing self. Don't forget to follow the show if you're not already, so you never miss another episode, and I will see you on the next episode.